ones were involved the type of bread used in the Eucharist. So in the Latin West, it's been unleavened bread. That is our tradition. In the East, leavened wheat bread. So which could both be used, or what? So this was a controversial issue. This was discussed during those 7 months where no formal sessions took place. Likewise, what happens to us immediately following death? In the West, there was a developed understanding of judgment, purgatory, the beatific vision. Part of this had to do with Western understanding of anthropology, Christian anthropology, who the human person was, and the powers that possessed by the soul and the body and so forth, which was, I would say, had developed more than they had in the East. Okay, and so there is a bit of a because the anthropology they're compatible, but they're not identical. The East had a different approach to this. That whole praying for the dead was something they did, and there's belief that their prayers were efficacious, but they had never talked about a place called purgatory. It was just as if, yeah, the two can overlap, but we're suspicious of all this terminology and this. It's just not something we've ever done. So these were other things that were talked about. And then finally, the supremacy of the Roman Pontiff, the Pope. What authority does he have in the Church? Is he first among equals? It is the head of the whole Church, the Vicar of Christ. These were the issues talked about during those 7 months. And a 10-member commission of Latins and Greeks were put together to discuss these issues. The Council of Ferrara sessions formally recommenced in October of that year, of 1438, once those princes had arrived. So delegates were sent out because many of the Christian princes, although they were very at ease with Basil, they had just sat on the sideline. You know, if you get the two sides fighting and you want a tax break, we'll have the two fight it out and we'll get our tax break. You know, not so much interested in the welfare of the church, but in the welfare of the pocketbook. Keep the two at odds and we'll materially benefit from it. So, but with the work of Ferrara and it looked as if Pope Eugenius truly had the issue of unity within the church at heart, and that he was working to bring it about, as was the Council of Ferrara. It brought the support of the various princes to Ferrara and then Florence, and Basel became very isolated in the midst of it. So on the Latin side of these debates, just a few of the names: Cardinal Cesarini, Andrew, the Archbishop of Rhodes, Louis, the Bishop of Forlì, Franciscan, Peter Perquier, and two Dominicans, John of Montenegro and Juan Torquemada. And on the Greeks, Mark of Ephesus, so the Church of Ephesus, the patriarch there, Bessarion, the Archbishop of Nicaea, and from what's now Ukraine, but then Russia, Isidore, the Archbishop of Kiev, and three others. So kind of an attempt to have a balanced panel to debate the issues. And Mark of Ephesus was not convinced he was very adamant that this filioque thing was not to be accepted. He was suspicious of the Romans, of the Latin West, and his mind was never changed. An outbreak of the plague in Ferrara, so the plague always has an interesting way of reappearing and causing things to happen. The plague appeared in Ferrara in December of 1438, and the Pope was once again nearly broke. So the Medicis in Florence offered to pay for everything if they moved it to Florence. Cosmo the Magnificent decided to basically invite everyone to Florence and put on a show, and that he did. And so the Pope, to get the Greeks to go to Florence, the Pope promised to furnish a galley for the defense of Constantinople, to pay for the maintenance of all the visitors, and to allow them, regardless if they just came back into union or not, to depart in 3 months' time. They wouldn't be kept under lock and key. That to come to Florence for 3 months to let's try to work things out. And he also promised to put together a crusade against the Turks to help them in their battle to stay sovereign. So the Council of Florence in 1439, you're talking about 6 months to try to bring about a reunion of the East and West, Greeks and Latins. At this point, nearly 400 years of formal separation, and the iciness goes back even farther. The council opened in Florence on January 10th, and the work of the mixed commission of Latins and Greeks eventually led to the writing or the definition of the Holy Ecumenical Council, Synod of Florence. And it reads as follows: Eugenius, Bishop, servant of the servants of God, for an everlasting record, with the agreement of our most dear son, this is Emperor John VIII, John Palaeologus, illustrious emperor of the Romans. Notice they don't call themselves Byzantines, but Romans. Of the deputies of our venerable brothers, the patriarchs, and of other representatives of the Eastern Church, to the following: Let the heavens be glad and the earth rejoice, for the wall that divided the Western and the Eastern Church has been removed. Peace and harmony have returned, since the cornerstone Christ has made both one, has joined both sides with a very strong bond of love and peace, uniting and holding them together in a covenant of everlasting unity, after a long haze of grief and a dark and unlovely gloom of long-enduring strife. The radiance of hoped-for union has illuminated all. This definition of union or reunion, all but four, and one of those being Mark of Ephesus, of the Greeks, the bishops who were present, signed the union, as did the emperor himself. The emperor came back into full union, as did the Patriarch of Constantinople, and they were convinced by the concern, the love, and respect, as well as the arguments made. And we're going to see maybe some evidence of why it didn't succeed when it went back. But the Greeks asserted that they claim that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father. They do not intend to exclude the Son. So this is the end result of all of those 7 to 10 months of debate here. But because it seemed to them that the Latins assert that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son as from two principles, so the Greeks are suspicious that, well, it's kind of like saying there are two gods and the Holy Spirit comes out of both, that the precedence of the Father coming first, so that's what they want to maintain. As from two principles and two spirations, they refrain from saying that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son. The Latins asserted that they say the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son, not with the intention of excluding the Father, but from being the source and principle of all deity, that is, of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. But they assert that there is only one principle and a single spiration of the Holy Spirit, as they have asserted hitherto. So basically, that the theologies at work are compatible. I mean, the suspicions, because of a lack of communication, a lack of charity on both sides, have caused a mountain out of a molehill, right? And that if we sit down as brothers, many of these things aren't as bad as they look. Further on in the definition, in the name of the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, we define, with the approval of this Holy Universal Council of Florence, that the following truth of faith shall be believed and accepted by all Christians, and thus shall be all profess it, that the Holy Spirit is eternally from the Father and the Son, and has his essence and his subsistent being from the Father together with the Son, and proceeds from both eternally, as from one principle and a single spiration. We declare that when holy doctors and fathers say that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father through the Son, this bears the sense that thereby also the Son should be signified. So that's a little bit more of the Eastern way of saying it, from the Father through the Son. And there, according to the Greek